There is a question a woman can ask, not out of manipulation, but from deep awareness, that stays in a man's mind long after the conversation ends. It is not about beauty, status, or charm. It's about presence. The kind of question that doesn't demand an answer, but awakens something within him he cannot ignore. Have you ever wondered what makes a man lie awake at night, replaying your words over and over, realizing he may have just met a woman he cannot forget? There is something mysterious about the human mind. It does not remember what is complete. It remembers what is left open. The question that remains unanswered becomes like a small flame in the darkness of one's thoughts, returning again and again to the surface. This is why a woman who speaks with awareness does not rush to fill silence, nor does she try to impress through words. She understands that the most powerful impression is made not by the words themselves, but by what they awaken inside the listener. When a man feels that a conversation has touched something deeper in him, he will think about it not because he must, but because he cannot stop himself from doing so. That is the true mark of connection. When presence lingers beyond physical interaction, when you speak to a man, understand that his mind reacts quickly, but his emotions move slowly. You might tell him something today, and he may not fully understand it until days or even weeks later. That is the beauty of depth. When a woman speaks from her inner stillness rather than her insecurity, her words carry a vibration that cannot be forgotten. They echo, they travel, they awaken thought after thought inside him. Such a woman does not need to raise her voice or argue for attention. She allows her energy to speak for her. The power is in the stillness, in the ability to plant a seed and let silence do the rest. There is a reason mystery has always been seen as an element of attraction. Not the kind of mystery born from games or distance, but the mystery that comes from spiritual confidence. A woman who knows herself completely has no need to explain herself constantly. She asks a question that reveals depth without revealing all. For example, when she asks something that makes him pause, not to defend, but to reflect, that is when she enters his inner world. Because true connection is not about exchanging opinions, it is about awakening awareness. And awareness, once awakened, cannot be forgotten. The words you choose and the energy behind them are like the difference between a wave and the tide. Words that come from anxiety crash quickly and disappear. Words that come from calmness, however, move like a quiet tide. They reshape the shore of another person's mind slowly, without being seen. So when you speak, do not seek reaction. Seek resonance. Reaction fades, but resonance transforms. It stays, it grows, it becomes part of him. That is how you become unforgettable. Not by how much you say, but by how deeply your words reach. There are conversations that make noise and conversations that make silence. The second type is the one that stays. When a man experiences silence after you speak, it means your words have entered his emotional field. He is no longer listening to reply, he is listening to himself. That silence is not emptiness. It is transformation beginning to happen. A wise woman recognizes that silence is not awkward, it is sacred. It is the space where understanding breathes. When she asks a question that requires reflection rather than defense, she opens the door to his deeper self. And in that moment, she ceases to be just a woman he met. She becomes a presence that his mind will revisit when he is alone. There is a difference between attention and remembrance. Many people can capture attention. Only a few can live in remembrance. You live in remembrance when your presence triggers growth in someone. When your question challenges a man to look inward rather than outward, you become the mirror that reveals his truth. The mind forgets what flatters it, but it never forgets what transforms it. So, instead of asking questions to be admired, ask questions that make him think. Ask questions that touch the part of him he hides even from himself. Because when you reach that place, he will not be able to move away from it easily. You will have touched his consciousness. When you embody stillness, your communication becomes art. You start realizing that real influence does not come from talking louder, it comes from speaking with presence. Stillness is magnetic. It makes others want to listen, not because they feel obligated, but because they feel peace in your energy. A calm presence disarms defense. It creates a field of trust. In that trust, your words land differently. They do not collide with ego, they settle in his awareness. A man who meets a woman like this will often find himself thinking about her long after she is gone. Not because she was dramatic, but because she was centered. Her energy remains with him as a reminder of what depth feels like. The world teaches many to chase attention through performance, but true mastery is silent influence. It is when your energy changes the atmosphere without effort. It is when your words carry weight because they are rooted in awareness, not in need. When a woman speaks from alignment, her words have direction. They do not wander. They reach their destination because they are born from clarity. Such clarity is rare, and rarity is remembered. When you are centered, every word you speak becomes a reflection of that inner peace. And peace is the one thing every human being is subconsciously drawn to. So when you ask him something, do not seek to impress him, seek to awaken him. Let your question arise from curiosity, not control. Ask in a way that honors his mind, but invites his heart. Ask with softness, but also with sincerity. And when you have spoken, let silence do its work. Do not rush to fill the pause. Let him feel the weight of your words. In that stillness, the echo begins. The question starts to grow roots. He will carry it with him, not as an instruction, but as a mystery. Something within him will keep returning to it, trying to understand not just your words, but the presence behind them. This is the art of communication that transcends conversation. It is the art of awakening reflection in another being. You do not win him through persuasion. You invite him into his own awareness. That is why he cannot stop thinking about you, because you are no longer just someone he spoke to. You become a mirror that showed him something new about himself. The mind remembers attraction, but the soul remembers recognition. When you awaken a man's recognition of truth, you live in his memory not as an image, but as an experience. And experiences are eternal. There is a profound difference between those who seek connection through noise and those who create connection through depth. When you speak from a calm and centered place, you do not need to shout to be heard. You do not need to prove your worth to be valued. There is a quiet kind of strength in restraint, a spiritual confidence that allows you to be selective with your words. The world is full of people speaking out of fear of being forgotten. But those who are remembered the longest are often the ones who speak with intention. When you express yourself from stillness rather than emotion, your words carry a frequency that moves deeper into the listener's heart. It's not about being mysterious for the sake of control. It's about understanding that depth creates presence, and presence creates remembrance. A woman who knows her worth understands that not every feeling needs to be expressed. Not every silence needs to be filled, and not every question needs to be answered immediately. She knows that when she remains calm in a world that feeds on reaction, she becomes rare, and rarity always commands attention. When a man encounters such composure, something inside him shifts. He begins to see that her energy does not depend on his response. That realization disarms him. He starts wondering why her silence feels more powerful than most people's words. He begins to replay her tone, her stillness, her way of holding space without seeking validation. In that reflection, respect begins to form, because depth is not shown through emotional display. It is revealed through emotional mastery. To communicate with depth is to understand that every word carries energy. Shallow words scatter energy, while intentional words focus it. When you speak to someone from the center of your being, you transmit more than information. You transmit energy, vibration, and intention. The words themselves may fade, but the energy remains. That is why some conversations feel like nourishment, while others leave you drained. One comes from awareness, the other from reaction. So when you speak, do not ask yourself if your words will impress. Ask yourself if your words are true. Truth may not always please, but it always leaves an imprint. And that imprint is what keeps you living in a person's mind long after the conversation ends. When two souls connect, their communication goes beyond sound. It becomes an exchange of frequencies. This is what spiritual resonance truly means. When one person's energy vibrates at a level that awakens something dormant in another. A woman who has cultivated peace within herself will automatically carry that vibration wherever she goes. Her calmness will feel like safety to those around her. Her presence will feel like clarity to those lost in confusion. A man may not be able to explain why he keeps thinking about her, but it is because she represents the feeling of balance his soul longs for. The more peaceful you become, the more magnetic your presence grows. Because peace is rare, and rarity always draws curiosity. Curiosity is the bridge between minds. When you awaken curiosity in a man, you have already entered his thoughts. But curiosity cannot be forced, it must be invited. It grows naturally when your energy reveals that you are not seeking to control, but to connect. When you ask a question that requires him to look inward rather than outward, you shift his attention from surface to soul. And once a man starts thinking about you in the realm of soul, you stop existing only in his memory. You begin to exist in his reflection. That is why some questions stay with him longer than any confession of love ever could. Love may stir emotion, but reflection stirs awareness, and awareness never fades. To awaken curiosity in another person, you must first live in curiosity yourself. You cannot lead someone into emotional depth if you have never explored your own. This is why your words must come from a place of experience, not performance. When you speak from the truth of your being, your presence carries authority. People sense authenticity. It cannot be imitated. When your communication flows from genuine inner knowing, it becomes impossible to forget. That is what makes the difference between those who are entertaining and those who are enlightening. The first leaves an impression on the mind, the second leaves an impression on the soul. Ask yourself this when you speak. Are you trying to be heard, or are you trying to awaken? There is a power in speaking words that touch not the ego, but the heart. When a man hears something that makes him question his own depth, he begins to respect you not as someone to conquer, but as someone to understand. And the mind always returns to what it seeks to understand. This is the subtle art of presence. It does not demand, it invites. It does not chase, it allows. And in that allowing, something extraordinary happens. Your energy begins to work even in your absence. Emotional depth is the antidote to a superficial world. Most people live on the surface, reacting to what they see and hear without truly listening. But those who listen beneath the words, who sense the silence behind the sound, communicate at a higher level. A woman who embodies emotional depth does not need to speak much to be remembered. She listens differently. She observes differently. She understands without demanding explanation. And that understanding creates an emotional atmosphere that few can walk away from. because people forget words, but they never forget how your energy made them feel. When you speak from this place of awareness, every conversation becomes sacred. It becomes less about proving yourself and more about revealing truth. You are no longer trying to be interesting. You are being real, and reality, in a world full of illusions, becomes unforgettable. So when you ask that one question that stays in a man's mind all night, remember, it is not just the question that matters. It is the presence behind it. It is the energy that carried it. It is the silence that followed it. It is the way your words reflected your inner harmony. That is what keeps him thinking, not because he's curious about you, but because something within him awakened through you. There is a kind of power that does not speak loudly, yet fills every space it enters. It is the power of presence, the quiet certainty of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to the world. When a woman moves with awareness, her energy becomes her introduction long before her words do. You can feel her calmness in her gestures, her patience in her poses, her strength in her stillness. She does not chase attention. She attracts it by simply being centered in who she is. Her presence communicates self-trust. And that trust tells others, I do not need to be chosen because I have already chosen myself. When a man encounters such presence, he feels both comforted and challenged. Comforted because her energy is stable, challenged because her peace exposes his restlessness. Feminine energy is not loud, nor is it submissive. It is the energy of flow, wisdom, and awareness. It's like water. It adapts, yet it never loses itself. It can take the shape of any container, yet its essence remains the same. When you are grounded in your feminine energy, you no longer fight to be understood. You simply express your truth, and those who are meant to resonate will understand without effort. True power comes from alignment, not aggression. The more aligned you are with your inner self, the more your external world begins to move in harmony with you. You stop trying to convince others to see your worth because your energy already communicates it silently. That is the kind of power that keeps a man thinking long after you've gone. Not because of what you said, but because of what he felt in your presence. A calm and self-aware woman makes people slow down without even asking them to. Her peace interrupts their chaos. Her stillness becomes a mirror that shows others how disconnected they have become from their own center. A man may not realize this immediately, but something about her energy will pull him inward. He will find himself reflecting more, speaking less, and wondering why her absence feels louder than other people's presence. That is the energy of grounded femininity. It doesn't push, it pulls. It doesn't chase, it allows. It doesn't demand, it reminds. Your presence can either be noise or it can be music. Noise tries to be heard. Music invites you to feel. The more you cultivate silence within yourself, the more harmonious your energy becomes. And when your energy is harmonious, it resonates deeply with those who cross your path. You begin to affect people not through what you do, but through what you are. That is when you become unforgettable, not because you perform, but because your energy leaves a signature in the minds of others. When a woman embodies such peace, she becomes magnetic. But magnetism is not about beauty, it is about balance. A man may be surrounded by many who are loud, expressive, and demanding, yet he will find his mind returning to the one who is peaceful, reflective, and self-contained. Why? Because her calm energy represents what his soul secretly craves: stability. Every human being is drawn to what they lack. The chaotic are drawn to the calm, the restless are drawn to the peaceful. The unsure are drawn to the self-aware, and so, without even trying, she becomes unforgettable. Her presence whispers what words cannot say. You can rest here. The human mind has a curious nature. It cannot resist what it cannot fully understand. It keeps turning over unfinished thoughts, trying to complete the pattern. This is why open-ended questions and mysterious presences stay longer in our awareness. When a woman speaks with layered meaning, when her words carry subtlety rather than clarity, the mind keeps returning to them, seeking resolution. But this curiosity is not a game, it is a spiritual phenomenon. It's the mind trying to grasp the depth of what it felt, but cannot fully explain. That is the true art of connection, to awaken reflection rather than reaction. When you learn to communicate not just through words, but through energy, you begin to realize that every exchange between two people is an energy exchange. Most conversations happen at the surface level, people talking without truly connecting. But when you become aware of energy, you begin to feel the flow beneath the words. You sense when someone speaks from fear or from confidence, from ego or from heart. And when you speak from your own still center, your words carry the vibration of truth. Truth has a frequency that the human body recognizes instantly. It may challenge the ego, but it nourishes the soul. That is why someone who has felt genuine truth will never forget it. It changes them. Your energy is the silent message that travels ahead of your words. It speaks before you speak, and it stays after you leave. If your energy is chaotic, people will feel restless around you even if your words are kind. But if your energy is grounded, people will feel calm even if you say very little. That is why self-awareness is so vital, because what you carry inside, you transmit unconsciously. Before you try to be understood, make sure your inner world is in harmony. If your thoughts are peaceful, your words will naturally carry peace. If your emotions are balanced, your presence will naturally command respect. You do not need to manipulate others to think about you. You only need to become the kind of energy that feels like truth to them. When you speak to someone with pure intention, you leave an imprint. It may not be visible, but it is felt. Think of energy as ripples in water. Every word, every gesture, every silence sends waves into the unseen. Some waves fade quickly because they were born from superficial emotion. Others travel far because they came from clarity and awareness. A single sentence spoken with genuine presence can echo longer than hours of empty conversation. This is why stillness within is your greatest strength. It gives power to everything you say. Men are not as emotionally expressionless as many believe. They simply guard their inner world. But when a woman's energy feels safe, when it carries no pressure, something inside him opens. He begins to listen with his heart, not just his mind. That is when your words reach deeper levels of his consciousness. When you speak from authenticity, he hears more than language. He hears your truth, and truth lingers. Even if he does not respond in the moment, your energy continues its work. It moves through his thoughts at night, whispering to his awareness. There was something different about her. To create this kind of resonance, you must stop trying to control outcomes. You cannot make someone feel your energy. You can only be your energy. You cannot force connection. You can only embody alignment. When you operate from peace, you transmit peace. When you operate from insecurity, you transmit confusion. So before you seek to leave a mark on another, first learn to live in harmony with yourself. The universe mirrors our internal state. The peace you carry within becomes the peace others experience through you. The mind craves closure, but the heart thrives on mystery. This is why curiosity is such a powerful emotional connector. When a conversation leaves space for interpretation, when it allows silence to exist without awkwardness, it invites the other person's imagination to participate. The imagination is the bridge between emotion and thought. When you speak to a man in a way that awakens both his logic and his curiosity, you engage his whole being. You are no longer just talking. You are creating an experience, and experiences are what the mind replays over and over again. But curiosity is delicate. It does not grow in environments of neediness or manipulation. It blossoms in authenticity. When you are genuinely curious about another person's truth, not to control, but to understand, you create a field of safety around the interaction. The other person feels free, and in that freedom, they open up. The more open they become, the more connected they feel. And connection is what keeps you in someone's thoughts, not effort or chase. Connection is invisible, but its effects are undeniable. There is a reason spiritual teachers often speak slowly, pause often, and choose their words carefully. They understand that energy travels in silence as much as it does through sound. When you give space between your words, you allow the listener's consciousness to breathe. You give their mind time to absorb meaning. You give their heart time to feel. In that space, understanding deepens. That is the art of true communication. Not to fill every moment with sound, but to let silence do its sacred work. When you master that, your words stop being ordinary, they become transformative. A woman who learns to balance her energy becomes both gentle and powerful, soft yet unshakable. Her presence does not demand attention. It commands it through grace. She does not need to argue for her value because her calmness already proves it. When she asks a man something profound, she does it from a place of awareness, not attachment. Her question is not a test, it is an invitation. It says, look deeper within yourself. What truth are you avoiding? And that invitation stays in his consciousness, echoing through his thoughts when he's alone. The true art of attraction is not about strategy. It's about awareness. It's about understanding that every interaction between two souls is an exchange of vibration. When your vibration is clear, you will always attract clarity. When it is chaotic, you will meet chaos. So cultivate peace, not performance. Cultivate awareness, not control. Because awareness is magnetic, it awakens recognition in others. Recognition that says, this person sees me beyond my surface. And that recognition becomes unforgettable. When you live with intention, your energy speaks with purity. You no longer chase attention, you emanate it. You no longer fear being forgotten. You know your presence is already living within those who have truly seen you. The power of feminine energy, the mystery of emotional curiosity, and the purity of vibrational communication all merge into one truth. The more aligned you are with yourself, the more unforgettable you become. When your words rise from peace and your silence flows with wisdom, you no longer need to make anyone think about you. They simply will, because your energy has touched the part of them that never forgets. In this world, depth is becoming rare. People are quick to speak but slow to feel, quick to react but slow to reflect. Yet, what makes a person unforgettable is not their outer beauty or the intensity of their words. It is the depth of their inner world. When a man meets a woman who carries emotional depth, he senses something different, something that demands his respect without her saying a single word. Her presence feels like a mystery that cannot be solved in one meeting. It draws him in, challenges his mind, and softens his heart at the same time. He cannot explain it, but he feels it. That is the power of depth. It moves beyond attraction and enters the realm of remembrance. Most people fear depth because it requires vulnerability. It asks you to face yourself before you can truly connect with others. A woman who has embraced her depth has already walked through her own shadows. She no longer hides from her truth. That is why she can stand in front of anyone, in silence, and still be felt. She doesn't need to convince anyone to see her worth, because she already sees it herself. Her emotions are not a storm, they are an ocean. Calm on the surface, powerful underneath. When a man encounters this energy, it unsettles him at first because it calls him to rise higher. It awakens something ancient in him, the desire not just to be admired, but to be seen and understood. Depth transforms the ordinary into sacred. A simple conversation with a deep person feels different. It leaves a trace. It's not what they say, but how they make you feel between their words. A deep woman listens with her whole being. She does not rush to reply, she receives. She does not try to control the flow, she allows it. She knows that true connection cannot be forced. It must unfold naturally. Her presence invites truth. A man who speaks with her begins to hear himself more clearly because her stillness reflects his own thoughts back to him. That is why he thinks of her long after she's gone, because through her, he started to hear his own soul. When you carry emotional depth, you become the kind of person who doesn't need to demand energy. You attract it through authenticity. People are drawn to what feels real, and reality in its purest form is rare. A world full of masks and performance will always remember the one who chose honesty. When your presence is rooted in truth, others will feel safe enough to remove their own masks. That is emotional depth. It is not heavy, it is healing. It reminds others of what they have forgotten, that vulnerability is not weakness, but a bridge to connection. The most powerful way to awaken someone's awareness is not through advice, but through gentle questioning. When you question not to judge, but to understand, you invite another person to look inward. The question becomes a mirror, reflecting their own truths. It makes them pause, not out of confusion, but out of realization. A wise woman knows how to ask a question that stirs reflection rather than defense. She asks in a way that calls the other person's higher self to the surface. A man feels this difference immediately. He realizes she is not trying to control him, but to understand him. And that is something rare in this world, to be truly seen without being fixed. There is an art to the gentle challenge. You can speak directly to someone's heart without raising your voice. When you challenge someone's ego, they will fight you. But when you challenge their consciousness, you awaken them. A gentle question like, "What are you truly seeking?" Or, "Does that choice bring you peace?" can do more than 100 lectures. It makes a person face their own truth. This is why great teachers do not give answers. They create space for self-realization. And in relationships, this same principle applies. When you awaken reflection in someone, you plant a seed that continues to grow even when you are no longer there. Every human being carries an inner longing to be known beyond appearance. When someone asks us a question that touches that hidden part of us, it creates a silent bond. That bond cannot be explained logically. It is felt through awareness. A man may forget the details of your conversation, but he will never forget how your question made him feel. He will remember the way his heart paused before he answered, the way his mind softened for a moment, the way your presence allowed him to be honest. That memory becomes an inner echo, returning again and again when he least expects it. Depth without compassion can feel heavy. Compassion without boundaries can feel draining. But when both coexist, you become balanced. Your depth is not something you use to test others, it becomes something that heals them. And that is where emotional rarity is born. In a time when most people speak to be heard, a woman who speaks to heal becomes unforgettable. She doesn't seek power through control. She radiates power through awareness. Her silence says more than others' noise. Her kindness is not weakness. It's a reflection of her strength. The rarest quality in a person is emotional rarity. The ability to remain compassionate in a world that rewards indifference and to stay self-aware in a world that distracts. A person who embodies emotional rarity values meaning over attention. She is not trying to be everywhere. She chooses to be fully present wherever she is. That is what makes her memorable. The world forgets those who try to please everyone. It remembers those who dared to remain authentic, even when it was easier to conform. In a time where attraction is often built on instant gratification, depth and emotional rarity stand out like a flame in the dark. They invite curiosity. People begin to wonder, why does she feel different? Why does her silence calm me? Why does her energy stay with me even when she's gone? It is because she operates from awareness, not from need. Her worth is not borrowed from validation. It is born from truth. And truth always leaves a mark. The secret of emotional magnetism lies not in perfection, but in presence. You don't need to have all the answers. You only need to be fully there. Presence is the highest form of love. It says, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. When you bring presence into every interaction, you create moments that people carry with them for years. Because presence is becoming so rare, those who offer it are unforgettable. A man will remember the woman who looked at him and truly saw him, not through desire, but through understanding. He will remember her energy, not her words. He will remember her peace, not her appearance. Emotional depth also requires courage, the courage to remain soft in a hard world. Many build walls around their hearts because they have been hurt, but walls that protect also isolate. When you choose to stay open, despite the risk of being misunderstood, you walk the path of awareness. Your openness becomes your wisdom. You begin to realize that vulnerability does not make you weak, it makes you magnetic. Because people crave authenticity more than perfection. They are drawn to what feels real, even if it is imperfect. When you master emotional awareness, your energy begins to work without effort. You do not chase people, they find themselves drawn to you. Your calmness becomes contagious. Your clarity begins to awaken theirs. This is not about power over others. It is about alignment within yourself. A woman who lives in alignment knows that she does not need to pursue love. She only needs to embody it. And that embodiment changes everything. The mind is addicted to stimulation, but the soul longs for truth. When you live in emotional depth and speak with awareness, you stop feeding the addiction and start nourishing the longing. Every time you speak, you either add noise to the world or silence it with meaning. Choose to speak from silence. When your words are born from reflection, they will always find their way to the heart. People often confuse mystery with manipulation, but they are not the same. Manipulation hides intention to control outcomes. Mystery holds intention sacred to invite understanding. The mysterious woman does not withhold truth. She reveals it slowly, with awareness. She does not play games. She moves with intention. The man who meets her feels the difference immediately. He cannot categorize her, and that confuses his ego, but awakens his spirit. Because mystery born from authenticity is not a strategy. It is the natural result of living in depth. When a woman carries emotional rarity, she becomes like a quiet teacher in a noisy world. Her energy says what words cannot. She may not always be understood, but she will always be felt. And those who feel her will find themselves transformed in small, invisible ways. They will begin to crave peace instead of chaos, truth instead of attention, presence instead of validation. That is the unseen influence of depth. It does not demand transformation, it inspires it. When you move through life with such awareness, you no longer fear being forgotten. Because you understand that what is real cannot be erased. Your presence, your energy, your truth, they will linger where words cannot reach. A man may meet many, but he will remember the one who made him pause, who made him think, who made him see himself with greater clarity. Not because she tried to impress him, but because she reflected his own depth back to him. And that reflection is something the mind cannot escape. It lives on quietly, like a ripple in the heart, reminding him of what connection truly feels like. Every person you meet reveals a fragment of their truth through conversation, but not everyone is ready to be seen deeply. The difference lies in the kind of questions you ask and the energy with which you ask them. When a woman asks a man a question that makes him stop, not to respond, but to think, something within him awakens. You see, most questions aim to extract information, but few are asked to awaken awareness. The way you frame a question reveals how deeply you perceive life. A shallow question demands an answer. A profound one demands introspection. When you learn to ask from awareness, you do not seek to expose a man. You invite him to reveal himself to himself. That is the kind of moment that lingers. Not because of you alone, but because through you, he catches a glimpse of his own depth. When a man encounters a woman who doesn't just hear his words, but listens to the silence between them, she holds a mirror to his character. The question that truly reveals who he is will never be, "What do you do?" or "What are your plans?" It might sound as simple as, "When do you feel most at peace?" or "What does loyalty mean to you?" These questions do not chase an answer. They plant a seed. They challenge his awareness. They quietly ask him to look inward, beyond the roles he performs in society. And when he does, he realizes that very few people have ever cared to see him without judgment or expectation. In that realization, your presence becomes unforgettable. People often believe connection is built through shared experiences, but the truth is, it's built through emotional reflection. When someone feels that they can reveal their truth and still be met with calm, non-reactive energy, they begin to associate safety with your presence. That safety transforms into admiration, and admiration into attachment. Asking the right question is not about strategy, it is about sincerity. A woman with wisdom doesn't ask questions to gain power. She asks to understand the layers beneath a man's defenses. Because every man, no matter how confident he appears, carries hidden doubts, buried regrets, and unspoken fears. And when your words give him space to express them without fear of being judged, he cannot help but think of you. Because you made him meet parts of himself he has long ignored. The mind resists what exposes it, yet it longs for what understands it. When your energy is calm, when you listen without the need to correct or control, you become like a mirror in which truth reflects naturally. You reveal his character not by confronting him, but by letting him reveal it himself. A man's reaction to a deep question tells you everything. If he deflects, he hides. If he reflects, he grows. The power of your question lies not in how clever it sounds, but in how pure your intention is behind it. When your intent is awareness, not manipulation, you create a vibration of trust. And this trust is rare. It's what makes your presence linger in his consciousness. A wise woman does not rush to fill silence. She allows the space between words to breathe. That silence is sacred because it invites truth to rise. Men are not used to silence, they are used to noise, opinions, expectations, demands. So when a woman speaks with calm intention and listens with presence, it disarms him. It awakens something ancient within him. The need to be seen without being fixed. And when he feels that, he starts to question himself, not because you asked him to, but because your energy created the space for truth to emerge. That is the subtle art of emotional intelligence, communicating with awareness, not impulse. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Ask and then listen, not only to his words, but to his pauses. Observe how he carries himself when truth is near. Does he stay open or does he retreat? In those moments, you witness his maturity. And as he realizes that you see him clearly, without reacting, you become an anchor in his storm. That is what makes a question unforgettable. It becomes a mirror of his truth and your grace. There's a certain mystery in emotional depth that cannot be imitated. It comes from self-awareness, from knowing that you don't need validation to connect. Most people speak to be understood, few speak to understand. When your intention is understanding, your words carry spiritual weight. They enter not through the ear, but through the heart. That's why when you ask a man a deep question, it's not the question he remembers. It's the feeling your energy created when you asked it. Creating space for reflection is one of the highest forms of love. It's not about helping someone escape their confusion, but giving them the strength to face it. You see, when you give a person room to think, to pause, and to feel seen without interruption, you help them awaken. Many people run from silence because silence exposes what they hide. But a woman of depth understands that silence is where truth speaks the loudest. When you don't rush to fill the void, you allow insight to arise naturally. That's why the most impactful conversations are the ones that end with quiet, not closure. When you leave a man with a thought that lingers, you're not manipulating his attention. You're expanding his awareness. The mind becomes addicted to what brings clarity. So if your presence leaves him with new understanding, he will seek it again. He will think of you, not out of desire alone, but out of respect for the peace he felt when you spoke. Peace is powerful because it is rare. When you embody it, you become unforgettable. True spiritual maturity shows when you can allow someone to find their own answer without pushing them toward it. This is the way of the wise feminine, the path of subtle guidance. It's not about dominance or control, but about allowing space for transformation. A woman who can hold space without fear becomes a reflection of grace. She teaches not through instruction, but through presence. A man may meet hundreds of women, but he will remember the one who made him see himself with clarity. Because that memory doesn't fade, it evolves with him. The power of emotional reflection lies in detachment. When you do not seek to change someone, you paradoxically become the reason they want to change. Your silence, your calm, your sincerity, they all serve as mirrors. And in your reflection, a man begins to question not his worth, but his depth. That is the invisible connection that binds souls. It transcends words, appearances, even time. When you speak from wisdom, every question becomes a portal. It opens the doorway between two minds and allows something higher to enter. A wise question can make a man realize that life is not about being understood, but about understanding. That realization alone keeps him thinking of you, not as someone he wants to possess, but as someone who awakened him. Because once a soul has been touched by awareness, it cannot forget the hand that reached into its silence. There is a form of power that does not announce itself. It does not come from loudness, control, or demand. It is the quiet energy of a woman who has mastered herself, who has learned the difference between reacting and responding, between wanting and allowing, between grasping and releasing. This is what creates the magnetic force that no man can resist. It is not in her looks, her words, or her actions alone. It is in her restraint, her silence, her ability to remain calm when others seek chaos. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who understands that the energy of her attention is sacred. When she chooses to withdraw it, the world notices. And when she gives it with full awareness, not attachment. Every man feels drawn to a woman who embodies self-control because deep down he senses her strength, not the strength of dominance, but the strength of discipline. When she speaks, her words have weight because they come from reflection, not reaction. When she moves, her presence commands respect, not because she demands it, but because she carries it effortlessly. This type of woman becomes a mirror of what every man secretly seeks: peace. In a world filled with noise, she becomes the rare silence that heals. But that silence is not emptiness. It is power, contained. It is awareness restrained by wisdom. You must understand that self-control is not suppression. It is understanding the timing of expression. There are moments when speaking brings clarity, and there are moments when silence speaks louder than words ever could. A woman who has mastered herself doesn't react to every emotion that passes through her. She observes it, feels it, and then chooses wisely. Her control over herself is not about denying feeling, it is about transcending it. She knows that energy spent in proving herself is energy taken away from her growth. So she allows her presence to speak instead. That presence is magnetic because it radiates peace. And peace, my friend, is what every restless soul seeks. When you master your own reactions, you no longer become predictable. Predictability is what makes people lose interest. When you are unpredictable in the right way, when your calm surprises anger, when your silence disarms arrogance, when your detachment confuses manipulation, you become powerful beyond words. A man will find himself wondering, why doesn't she respond the way others do? Why doesn't she chase, argue, or explain? And the more he wonders, the deeper his thoughts spiral around you. This is the beauty of a centered woman. She teaches without trying. Her stillness makes others question their own chaos. Detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It is seeing reality as it is, without the fog of emotional illusion. Most people believe that love requires attachment, but attachment often creates blindness. Detachment, on the other hand, allows love to breathe. It is the difference between holding something tightly until it breaks and holding it gently so it can grow. When you are detached, you no longer beg for attention, validation, or closure. You become whole within yourself, and that wholeness radiates strength. A woman who is not desperate for attention naturally becomes the one who receives it effortlessly, because her energy is self-sustained. She is not draining, she is nourishing. Men are instinctively drawn to this energy. It challenges them. It makes them curious. They cannot conquer what is free. They cannot control what does not cling. They cannot forget what does not beg to be remembered. The paradox of detachment is that it creates the very attraction that attachment tries to force. When you don't need someone's response to feel at peace, your presence becomes unforgettable. The moment a man realizes he cannot affect your peace, he begins to value it. Because every man wants what he cannot shake, and every man respects what he cannot move. A woman who embodies emotional detachment does not withdraw from love, she refines it. Her love is not based on fear of losing someone. It is based on appreciation of what is, without clinging to what should be. She can care deeply but still remain centered. She can express emotion but never lose herself in it. This kind of love feels light, not heavy. It inspires, not confines. It is love born from consciousness, not dependency. And when a man experiences this kind of love, it becomes his standard. He begins to awaken to the truth that emotional chaos is not passion, it is immaturity. When you become peaceful within, you stop asking others to complete you. Instead, your energy completes the space you are in. You start radiating calm, and that calm draws people who seek refuge in your presence. This is what it means to become his inner question. When your energy stays with him long after you leave, not because you tried to impress him, but because your essence reminded him of something he lost: peace, authenticity, awareness. You become the silent echo in his mind, the reflection he cannot escape. Most people try to make others think of them by staying visible through words, texts, attention. But the truth is, what truly stays is not what is seen, but what is felt. If your energy has depth, if your presence carries awareness, then your absence will speak even louder than your presence. He will remember not just what you said, but how you made him feel about himself when you were around. You see, people don't miss others. They miss how they felt in their presence. So, if your energy made him feel centered, awakened, and alive, he will think of you when he feels lost. That is how you become unforgettable, by being the peace he couldn't find elsewhere. This power is not taught, it is cultivated. It comes from solitude, from moments of stillness where you meet yourself deeply. When you are no longer afraid of being alone, your energy changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop proving and start being. Detachment gives birth to the highest form of love, freedom. Freedom to care without clinging, to give without expecting, to stay without losing yourself, and to leave without bitterness. Many mistake detachment for indifference, but indifference is rooted in fear, while detachment is rooted in awareness. Indifference closes the heart, detachment opens it. It allows you to love more purely because it removes fear. You no longer love to gain something. You love because it is your nature. You do not seek to possess, you seek to understand. That kind of love transforms relationships. It shifts them from need to respect, from desire to connection, from fear to growth. When you reach this level of emotional freedom, people begin to see you differently. You become a mirror for their unrest. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your stability highlights their instability. And instead of reacting, you observe. You no longer try to change anyone. You simply hold your center. Some will feel inspired by your peace. Others will feel threatened by it. But your task is not to please. It is to remain true to your awareness. The more grounded you become, the more magnetic your presence feels. Because peace is rare, and people crave what they cannot easily find. There is an invisible conversation that happens beyond words. It's the language of energy. When your energy is clean, free from desperation, resentment, or need, you speak this silent language fluently. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. Your energy does it for you. You don't have to chase love. Your calm attracts it. You don't have to compete for attention. Your detachment commands it naturally. This is why the woman who has mastered her inner world becomes unforgettable. She is not just someone a man wants, she is someone he respects. Respect is the highest form of attraction. Lust fades, emotions fluctuate, but respect endures. And respect grows from mystery, from depth, from authenticity. A woman who is detached from outcomes, who doesn't try to impress, becomes a mystery. She doesn't reveal everything at once. She allows her truth to unfold slowly, gracefully, intentionally. That mystery doesn't come from games, it comes from depth. She is not withholding, she is selective. Not everyone deserves access to her energy because she knows it is sacred. A man cannot forget a woman who treated him with depth. He might move on physically, but mentally he will replay moments with her when life feels shallow again. She becomes the standard against which he measures all others. Because she wasn't loud, she was profound. She wasn't controlling, she was calm. She wasn't desperate, she was detached. And he will realize that what he mistook for distance was actually wisdom. When you live this way, you don't just influence people, you elevate them. Your calm presence teaches them patience. Your boundaries teach them respect. Your silence teaches them to listen. And your detachment teaches them to look within. You become the question they can't stop asking. Not because you are elusive, but because you are real. In a world addicted to attention, being self-contained is revolutionary. In a world of constant talking, your silence becomes sacred. The true secret of magnetism lies not in effort, but in energy. You do not chase, you align. You do not demand, you embody. You do not wait for validation, you validate yourself through awareness. The energy of a woman who knows herself cannot be ignored. She may be quiet, but her presence is thunder. She may be still, but her essence moves mountains. She may not speak often, but when she does, her words become thoughts that echo in the mind of others. A woman like this becomes unforgettable, not because she tried to be, but because she is. Her energy remains like a fragrance of peace in the mind of everyone she touches. Her detachment teaches others that love is not about holding on, but about growing together in freedom. Her presence reminds others that silence is not emptiness, it is depth. And her calm teaches that the truest form of power is not in control, but in surrender. The moment you understand that you do not need to chase anyone to be remembered, your energy changes. You start living from abundance, not lack. You realize that those who are meant for you will be drawn by your peace, not your performance. You stop trying to be impressive and start being authentic. And authenticity is magnetic because it cannot be faked. Every man remembers the woman who was at peace with herself. Every heart seeks the vibration of calm once it has tasted chaos. And every soul that meets awareness cannot forget its light. That is how you become his inner question. The thought that lingers, the silence that speaks, the calm he cannot escape. You do not remind him of what he wants, you remind him of who he could be. And that reflection is far more powerful than attraction. It becomes transformation. When you reach a place where you no longer need to chase love, prove your worth, or fight for validation, you step into the highest form of power, inner peace. It is not loud, it is not desperate, it is not performative. It is the quiet confidence of knowing who you are and what you bring to any space you enter. When a woman stands rooted in her awareness, she no longer asks for recognition. She naturally commands it. Her silence speaks where words cannot. Her calm becomes the answer to chaos. Her presence becomes the reflection that awakens others to their own truth. A woman like this does not seek to be remembered, yet she always is. Not because she tried to impress, but because her energy left an imprint beyond the surface. She becomes the question that lingers in the hearts of others, the reminder of peace, depth, and authenticity. And in a world that glorifies noise, her stillness becomes the rarest form of strength. The power is never in chasing what fades, it is in becoming what endures.